All right, what's going on, everybody? Happy Monday. I feel like it's one of those days. Most people don't realize it. Daniel, I know you know this too. Like, I think it's like, oh, Jake's always on LinkedIn. He's like producing content and doing that. It's like, oh yeah, I also have a job. Like, I also, have
Yeah.
a company to run and 35 mouths to feed. So it's a lot of a lot of exciting things. So I'm pumped for this, man. We got a chance to meet. Um, you know, I guess it'd been about a couple months ago, probably,
Mhm.
where we were kind of chopping it up. Obviously, if you follow my content, you already know that, I talk a lot about AI and AI use cases for sales. So, looking for today's conversation, another guy who, you're used to just hearing from me and Kevin Dorsey 24/7. So it'll be good to hear from Daniel. And for those of you that don't know Daniel, definitely go check him out on LinkedIn. Let me see. I think I got a link for your yeah, here you go. I got your LinkedIn profile. We'll drop that in the chat too, so people can go check out what you're up to. There we go. So go check out what Daniel's up to. Daniel's got a cool background. Previously at Microsoft, product marketing, and then a few short years later, he made kind of the move. We call it to the dark side, Daniel. When you make that
Right.
shift, when you make that shift across the aisle, I know a lot of people, they do the opposite. They're like, man, I'm not trying to do this sales. I like this idea of product marketing.
Yeah.
And came over to his current position where he's a biz dev manager at RSM. But really where we got connected is early this year. He launched an online course with a guy that I've had on the show before, Ian Koniak, ex amazing sales leader from Salesforce, and now has his own kind of sales training workshop business. AI for the strategic seller, which is a comprehensive guide for AI and sales, and it's pretty cool. Obviously, we've got some of our own ChatGPT stuff, but the course he's put together, I think, especially if like you're into prompting, you're definitely like, hey man, I want some really tactical use cases. That's what I thought was really cool about the course. Daniel's like, I felt like it was very much, people could just like copy and paste like what
Yeah.
you're like what you're doing, which in my opinion is what all of this should be. So yeah, man, welcome. Looking forward to the conversation the next, 25, 30 minutes or so.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate you having me.
Feel free to add. I don't know. I mean, I think that
Yeah.
hopefully
I
that
can
was
I can add a little bit. Yeah, so I have a
comprehensive.
unique background. I spent my entire career in marketing and then have been in sales for about 3 years now. So that role at Microsoft was my first sales position, and it took me 2 years to get into it, but I was able to land a pretty strategic role kind of as my first sales role. And when I joined sales, that's why I hired Ian, because he was super successful at Salesforce and he kind of had the frameworks for, how to even
Yeah.
do strategic sales. And as I was going through his course and I was drinking from the fire hose of not even understanding what I'm selling, not understanding how to sell anything, he teaches all these frameworks in this course. And I was like, hold on, ChatGPT came out, and I think I can use ChatGPT to follow all these frameworks and all the deep work that us as sellers love to do. It kind of streamlines that, so it has all the prompts for every stage of the sales cycle. So
There you go, man. Well, that's
yeah,
good. See, another thing, look, why most of you are probably tuning in, it's like, why reinvent the wheel? Just go steal from all the work that Daniel and I have already done, right? And that's,
right.
obviously with you and getting up to speed, that's how I was early in my sales career. Is the same thing. I'd hear somebody, I go, oh, that sounds good. I'm just going to do that.
That's
Like
right.
I didn't feel like the ego or the need to be like, it has to be my idea or it's not valid. It was kind of the opposite. I think I read a ton of books very early on, and listened to a lot of books, and from that was really able to just borrow, and then I'd be on the sales floor and I'd be like, oh man, that's smart.
Yeah,
Like
right.
that sounds a lot better than what I'm doing. So, all right, man. Well, let's jump into this too. And if you want, so if you haven't checked out the course yet, in here, we're live on LinkedIn right now, Daniel. I don't know if if you go to my profile, um, you can drop a link to it, and if you're tuning in now, you can actually get a special discount code. And make sure, as usual, drop in the chat like where you're joining us from, what your role is if it's not your headline. What's up, Greg? Greg Walters is in the house. Greg's always in the house. He's got usually some pretty insightful comments as a part of it, which is awesome. So good to have you, Greg, as usual. Got some other folks joining in. Mark Mack, what's going on, Mark? We've got somebody all the way uh, from Oman in the house, which that might be our
Wow.
first Omanese, uh, you know, uh, dial in. So I love it. Glad to have you, man. As a student, you're going to learn a lot. You can apply a lot of this to being a student as well too. So love that we've got such a great audience here, different folks that kind of tune in as you start to join. Again, always just drop in. Again, I can't tell you how at least once every month or a couple of months I'll get, oh yeah, I saw somebody commented on LinkedIn and I actually hit them up and we set up a meeting or something like that. So you're not doing just the comments to tell us where you're from. You're also letting people come check out what you're up to. So that's a big one. So, all right, man, we've got a bunch of ground to cover as a part of this. Daniel's going to drop a link for the course into the chat. You can just go, Daniel, you can just go to my LinkedIn and you should be able to click in. If not, I don't know if Becca's.
Jake, I just emailed it to you, man. I don't know how to use this chat and restream. So
you can't use the chat and restream. That's why I was like, you got to actually physically go to LinkedIn. Don't ask me, man. It's all because like LinkedIn doesn't have a native. What do you call it? A native. Oh, that was a picture, so it's not letting me click whatever you sent. It's coming across.
I'll grab it
as a link. So let's jump into it. So while you're doing that, we can jump into a few of the questions here. First is, okay, mastering the message. And look, me and KD talked a little bit about some of our cheat codes here too. Obviously, oh, there you go. You got it right there.
Yeah, I figured it out.
He dropped it. It's in the chat now. So we've got that there. Mike Carter's in the house. What's going on, Mike? And then, yeah, if you use promo code Dunlap, you can get a discount too, which is great. Discount as well. All right, cool. So let's talk about using it to understand what they sell, right? Or who they can get in, how the messaging might resonate. Let's talk about like mastering the message. I got a DM. You'll appreciate this, and you can maybe answer this question as a part of your answer. And the DM I got, I think it was on YouTube, or maybe it's a comment on YouTube, and he said, how far is too far, right? Like, and talking to KD too, and he talked a lot about like, look, it's important that people still learn like that this person, like what this persona cares about, et cetera. So maybe talk about the use cases for you around mastering the message, and what are the pieces that you think humans should still be thinking about, or humans should still really be in the loop or handling most of.
Yeah, so I'll kind of share why this one was out of all the modules that are in the course and that in the ways that I use AI, I think mastering your message was the most impactful for me. And the reason was because when I got into sales, like sales was new to me, but also the product I was selling was new to me. I was selling ERP and CRM. And to me, I didn't really even fully understand what those acronyms meant when I got into sales. So, the first year I was in sales, there was no ChatGPT. So the way I was trying to onboard myself was, just doing research, reading the pitch decks, all the marketing materials that Microsoft has, trying to read the case studies and the customer stories to understand the impact that it had. And I don't know if I just don't learn that way or I'm more of like a auditory guy or something, but it was tough. And when ChatGPT came out and I first learned about it, I remember one of the first times I started playing with it, I kind of used it. I don't know, it kind of clicked for me instantly that I should use it as a thinking partner.
Exactly.
So I kind of used it as, I'll kind of share the way the prompt structured in the course, but I'll give it context like, you are let's say a Microsoft sales executive. You have a background in driving digital transformation initiatives through ERP and CRM. My goal is to help customers buy and adopt dynamics to help with strategic business outcomes and objectives. I'd like to understand my business and my solution at a fundamental level so I can be an expert at the problems that I solve. Please develop a document for me to reference in the following format. And then I kind of brain dumped like what are the things that I need to understand, right? First one is like, what is the product that I sell? Please explain it at a fundamental level, share the unique value prop. Why do companies buy our solution? What are the triggers that would prompt customers to look at a new solution? Who's my ideal customer profile? Is there people that are a better fit than others? Who's a bad fit? What value does the product provide? And I just kind of went on and on in terms of like, for me, in order to have conviction in what I sell, here are the questions that I need to answer. And so the way I think about using AI in this is like, you give it a persona, you tell it exactly who you want it to be, you be specific about the outcome that you want, and you kind of go from there, and you can kind of keep working with it. So I'll say, like, sometimes it'll give me an output, and I'll say, hey, I don't really understand that. Can you explain it more fundamentally? Explain it like a you're a teacher. Pretend you're a teacher and you're explaining it to me based on my learning style, and you can kind of keep working with it. So,
I love it. And
um,
how experienced were you already when you did that? Because I think that, look, that's a really good one. I think some people like that be like, I know what my value prop is,
yeah,
right? But like, you had already started sell, like you said, like you didn't start selling and you had it. Like, how did you, how did you delineate that? Because I think a lot of sellers are like, well, I already know my value prop, but and maybe actually what you could share, what were like the epiphanies from what it did, like how it simplified it or how it laid it down? Like, what were the like, oh my God, that just saved me 6 months.
yeah. I think the epiphany was that when as I was using it to master my message, I was like, okay, I kind of continued the thread, and I was like, well, one of my accounts is X. How does that potentially help their company? And then when it kind of started to create that point of view, I was like, oh my God, I can do so much with it. Can you please create an email for me based on this, point of view in the following format? Sentence one, warm and personal. Sentence two, give a sincere compliment. Here's his LinkedIn profile. Here's his crystal nose profile of how he likes to be communicated to. And I just kind of kept building on it and working on it. And as I'm doing this, I'm like, oh my God, you can do anything with this thing, you know? So,
Yeah,
and then, you can, I know we're probably jumping around, but then you can say, all right, I have an upcoming conversation on Monday with the CIO. Let's do a role play both sides of the conversation. You be the seller and the CIO. How could the conversation go? And it could do a role
exactly.
play. All right, now, hey, I'll be the seller in the role play and you'll be the customer. Let's go from there. I mean, it's just nuts what you could do. So I
That,
think the epiphany
that's
came with
such a
just
good
like,
one, man.
yeah, limitless.
Limit. Yeah, and again, but a lot we talk about is just think of those scenarios where you need a thought partner. You might
Yeah,
go, the thought partner might be your own brain, where you're sitting up at night and you're like, oh, okay, I got this deal. I know this meeting's on Thursday. I got this, blah, blah, blah.
yeah,
Feed it that. And I think the other thing that I want you to listen to when you hear what Daniel says around prompting. Daniel is detailed. He's like, I think that not enough people, they don't like the answers they get because they don't tell it who to be. They don't give it enough, like call it like background story or enough specificity to where then the results are decent, but it's not what it could be. Let's put it that way.
mhm,
And so I think for a lot of you, listen to how he's describing it. And actually, that actually dovetails perfectly. And again, it's fine. We've got a bunch of questions in here. We can jump back and forth between. So let's talk about role playing. Which is
mhm.
kind of a version of this. How do you set it up? Somebody asked me this question too. Maybe it's on YouTube. How do you help to set it up for role playing to where it's somewhat helpful? It definitely can be a
Yeah.
little too nice at times, but that's fine. Um,
Yeah.
but hey, that's better than nothing. Also, I'm going to drop in here kind of our 10-point checklist. So, again, we're kind of bouncing around between these different ideas around role playing, research, scenario. I call that scenario planning, which you said,
Mhm.
hey, these things are the variables. Help me scenario plan. But what about role playing? Because I do feel, and especially now, for those of you who have not been messing with ChatGPT um, mobile edition,
Mhm.
dude, you guys can just literally, you can pull up one of like our custom GPTs or custom GPT, and then you can literally just hit the headphones and just start talking to it,
Yeah.
which is like ready to get started. So how do you think about getting the most out of it for role playing specifically?
Yeah. So I think I can share the prompt that I use. It's all about, again,
Yeah,
I think it's all about how you think about AI. Don't think of it as a search engine. Think of it as like hired as if you hired an assistant, like a real person, like a real assistant, and he doesn't know anything about what you're trying to do. He can do anything, but he doesn't know what you're trying to do. You're not clear. So you want to start by giving it a persona, giving it a goal, and then being super specific about what you want it to do. So, and even I'll just give you a tip, and I think that I wanted to add that to your last question, but in terms of getting the most out of these prompts, a great thing to add to the end of your prompts is ask me 5 questions in order to give me the best possible output. And it'll ask you 5 questions that then you can just, answer, and it'll customize it. But for the role playing, again, you give it a persona. You're a sales executive at Microsoft. You have a background in this. Your goal is to help customers, buy the solution to help with strategic business objectives and challenges. You're super skilled at simplifying how your technology can enable the business, and you always come off as a trusted advisor focused on empowering the customer. You have an upcoming call with and then insert the person's name at X company. Here's the agenda of the meeting. Here's the personality of the profile that you're meeting with. So grab Crystal Knows. If you guys don't know the tool Crystal Knows, it scrubs the LinkedIn profile and kind of predicts their personality.
Can I ask you a real question there, Danielle?
Yeah.
Danielle. Um, how often does it not say this person prefers a direct communication? Like every single time, every single all these personality profile things to me. Like if you are an executive at a company, myself included, guess what? I prefer direct communication. Jake likes things that are to the point. I feel like these things are like candidly not a waste of time. Like the amount of times and you're laughing because you know it's true. So like that's why when I see these like AI email bots. Like and again, I won't mention it by name. I really like some of the people that are involved in them. But what gets a meeting with an executive today is not like Jake speaks direct. So write a short email. It's like, no, do you actually know what the hell this business does and how you might have a solution for it? So anyway, I just wanted to interject there. If you can use Crystal Knows, but I'm just if 10 times in a row it says Jake prefers or Johnny prefers or Rachel prefers, just use direct communication. I think we all prefer at this.
Yeah, it's a hit or miss. I've done the experiment of actually being on the call with somebody and just being like, hey, this is what your Crystal Knows profile like looks like. What do you think? And some people are like, oh, this is spot on. This is crazy. So and then others are just like, so I don't know.
You know what else that reminds me of? Your horoscope. You know what else? You know what else literally describes what you just said? It's telling someone they're a Gemini for the first time or a Capricorn, right? It's like literally the same. It's like, oh my gosh, that's so spot on. So it's like, look, anyway, I digress.
You're way better off. You're way better off saying like if you already have a point of view for an account, you would attach that to the role play. Here's the meeting I'm going into. Yeah. Here's the point of view I have. Here's the message that I want to communicate. And then go. And then as you'll I typically put the prompt in text and then it'll actually start responding in text, but then I'll hit the headphones thing and I'll say, hey, let's, I want to do a role play. Like you play both sides of the conversation. And I like to start that way because I like to hear both sides. I want to see how it goes. And then as it's going, I'll interject. Now you can just like interject right in there and say, hey, I want the CIO to be way more skeptical and push back on certain areas. Here's the objections that I anticipate. Please incorporate that in there. And you kind of keep working with it, keep making it more robust.
I love that. And that's where, just real quick, I just want to call it again. Daniel is dropping gold here because what he just said, I think what happens with a lot of people is you also don't know what good looks like, right? Like, let's say you're starting to do your prompting, you're doing it, you get an output, and in your mind, you're like, wow, this is pretty detailed. But there's something that he said that, probably 5 minutes ago that you can just do at the end of every prompt, which is once you do your best version, you do exactly what he just said. Hey, once you give me this, I want you to come up with 5 very specific inputs that would make your results. And again, I want you guys to understand the language you use matters. This is an LLM, okay? And what that means for all of you out there, when you say things to ChatGPT and you say, I want you to be more thorough on this response, it will be more thorough. Like, it's not like Google search where it's going to give you a result based on your own preferences. Like it responds to coaching. And so when you do that prompt that Daniel just said, and then at the end, if you of every prompt, even, you just tack on, ask me 4 very specific questions that for this specific scenario would make my role play even better. And let's role play that part of it too. So anyway, I was just going to call that out because that's just something literally anybody could do on every single prompt that would immediately upgrade the quality of their prompts by 100% probably would be my guess.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, I think the biggest thing, like if anybody could take anything away from this session is go play with it. If you haven't played with it, just go play with it, do anything with it, and just imagine that you hired an assistant and you're having them help you with your job and pick a scenario, whether it's, a proposal you got coming up or anything, and just start working with them on it and be specific about what you want.
All right, I got 2 questions, man. And I actually have more than 2, but we've got time for 2. But I don't want to miss it. I want to know for you is what impact has AI, and again, you've talked about a little of this, like your approach with executives
Yep.
or how you're increasing, and maybe this is a proxy for quality conversations. Again, going back to like what that guy had asked me, right? Like, Jake, you want the person to get better at the conversations. You don't just want them to parrot everything. So
Mhm.
how has this impacted, call it like, the quality of your ability to have more engaging conversations across the board?
Yeah, I mean, it was huge. So again, I was super new to sales, and so and I'm an overthinker. I always or I don't want to say I am. I have a tendency to overthink, and I did before. So before ChatGPT, I would spend hours, like if I had a meeting at, let's say, 1 p.m., first meeting, maybe an initial call with an executive, I would wake up early and I'd just prep. I'd be like, oh, I got to get ready. I'd visualize how I wanted it to go, intent, everything, and I'd go crazy on research and be on their website and try to find everything and doing everything manually. Now I have a preparation prompt for an executive call, and I
Yeah.
have exactly what I want in it, right? So in terms of how it's impacted me, I don't have to spend as much time prepping, and I have way more confidence going in. So the things that I want to know when I go into an executive call, right? I want to know business overview of the customer, right? What do they do? How do they make money? What's their industry trends? um, all the attendees there. What could keep them up at night? What are their areas of responsibility? What would they potentially care about most? What's in it for them with this potential project? I want to outline my intent, and then I want a point of view. Um, how can we, in their business language, how can we help them solve their problems or outcomes we can deliver? What's some compelling insights that give me an opportunity to teach them something new about their business or provide insight into their competition? Relevant customer story, list of questions. So I literally use ChatGPT to create all these. And I mean, they're super specific in terms of what I want to be prepped for.
Yeah.
And I use, either in the past I used Copilot. Now I've been playing with Perplexity a lot, which is awesome for research. And it
Yeah.
just gives me, like, if you're the president of the United States, you're not doing your own, you get an executive brief in the morning and you know everything that's going on. So that's the way I see it now. I use ChatGPT to give me an executive brief so I'm ready. And then I use that to get prepped. And I think we all know sales is a transfer of energy. Your job isn't to create or do all the research. Your job's to get conviction in what you're selling, and like you want to understand what you're going to help them with, and then you're in there to have a conversation focused on them, you know?
And again, hopefully, I mean, look, the good part is I like when we're dropping just like general sales knowledge here as well too. Greg had a good follow on. He's like, tell LLM to ask questions based on the answers you give, so the conversation is always different. Yep. Again, all these different like use cases that you can kind of keep, trying. All right, last question here is, looking back on the different ways you've integrated AI, which strategy or technique do you think has had the biggest impact on your sales performance? And I know that's a big question, right?
Yeah.
But I get asked this question a lot. Right? They say, Jake, look, we know we need to do something. What's the ROI? And I point out multiple things. I'm like, this is at least a 10% increase in productivity, right?
Right.
Et cetera. So if I said, look, you got one to pick, Daniel. What is the one that you think you've been able to tie most directly to return?
So, in tech sales or strategic sales, especially if you're selling a complex product, you're not selling alone, right? It's not just you selling. So I found the meeting prep and like developing these executive briefs and capturing all the notes and the point of view to be most impactful, not only because it helps me, be ready for meetings, but also I create these assets or these briefs that are super professional with them, and then I can share it across the team. I can share it to the executives that I'm working with that are going to be engaged in the account. And I just like look super squared away. They're like,
Yeah.
Daniel, working with Daniel's awesome. Look at this brief he has. All the opportunity notes are captured. Here's the company that we're working with. Here's what they're struggling with. So it's just like it helps me stay so much more organized, especially after I, created this course and I have everything super structured. Like, hey, I'm going to an executive meeting. I can use this exact prompt. I get this clean output that I can share across the team. Um, I can, and then obviously I know you only said one, but prospecting is huge too, because,
No, man, go ahead, drop if you've got
especially,
like a 1B.
yeah, 1B is, um, prospect, just in terms of time savings. I used to spend so much time, drafting that individual personalized email that we're all trying to, that perfect email that we're trying to draft. And now I can at least get off the blank page and use a prompt to get started, and then add some, personalization on top. And it's just saved me a ton of time, and um, they're effective. So
Yeah, and I think, look, what he's not doing is advocating that you copy and paste, right?
right,
The
right.
Chat GPT, and that's what we found. We found it is. I call it the triad, and you can borrow this too. And you described it the same way, which is like the role that I interact with the most, the industry, and then trends for people in that role in the industry, triangulated with what we do, right?
I like
And
that.
that triad is what books meetings today. Not did you speak, my language, specifically. Like if someone even says, and I'm not a fan of the I'd love tos, but they do those other three, I'm taking the meeting, as
Yeah.
opposed to someone who, made sure that their email was, direct or on point enough. So, and then yeah, for a lot of you too, I'll drop the link in here. Again, if you're, the next thing for a lot is to think about the future of this is, prompting is skill set one. But as we move to more and more agent based, and again, the good part, why we preach ChatGPT so much is it's really the only one with custom GPTs, where the perplexity search, again, we've got a lot of people who they like the links, right? As a part of it, which I think is helpful. But ChatGPT does that too if you've got the right settings enabled. But custom GPTs will just allow you to do exactly what Daniel said, which is, like we've got one called Discovery Call Prep Bot. And I agree with you. I think out of the ones that we've got, and the other one that's most popular is called Help Me Book a Meeting With, which is really similar. Um, I think those two are the ones that we find that, our users are kind of going back to more and more. So if you haven't thought about investing in custom GPTs to save you some additional prompting time, definitely check those out. Daniel, amazing tactical insights here, man. Like, I think, for me, even just the remind, again, I feel like some of this with ChatGPT, you might feel this too, or with generative AI, is you'll like do some real cool prompts or some different things, and then you forget about it because
Yeah.
you've moved on to something else. But I think for me, the one that I think is definitely going to stick is make sure at the end you say, hey, ask me a couple more questions to make this more specific. I think
Mm,
that's something that I can start to add to the end of every single one of my prompts.
yeah.
That's just a win-win. And I also love, again, you're getting some great sales advice here from Daniel too about, look, how you need to show up for an executive meeting. So I appreciate it, man. If you don't, go ahead, make sure you go follow Daniel. Go check out the course as well too. It's at the very top. And tell us what you think. Like I said, if you just go check out that course, you literally are just going to be like copying and pasting, and he's got templates in there for you as well too. So
Yeah.
Daniel, appreciate you, man. Good to have you on. I'm glad we finally made it work. And thanks everyone for tuning in. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.